Welcome to another episode of Drupal School. I'm Elliot Rothman, and this is part 3 of 3 of creating a single user blog. Now, I decided to break this up into a third section on its own because we're going to roll up our sleeves a little bit and kind of geek out and get really into what kind of happens underneath Drupal. So up until this point, we've just kind of configured it out of the box, tweaked a few settings, and added a module. Today what we're going to do is take a look at another way of organizing our blog terms rather than doing it manually. We'll use another module to do that. We'll also take a look at the IRC channel for Drupal support, which is #Drupal support. And that's where another place you can go to get help. And the last thing that we'll do is take a look at how to tweak a theme. So we're going to download a contributed theme, and we're just going to modify it slightly. So why don't we get started? One of the things that you'll need before we begin is an IRC client. So you'll see over here, if you're on the Mac, I really recommend using Colloquy. It's free, it's open source, it works great, and it looks beautiful. Does some nice things like float little messages when you have it running in the background. So if somebody mentions your name and you haven't popped your head in to see what's going on, it'll float over the top of whatever else you're doing, and it's just really awesome. If you're on the PC or if you're on Linux, you can use Xchat, and this is I believe it's another open source program, and it actually is compiled for OS X as well as various other operating systems. I've used Xchat on the Mac, and it worked pretty well. I just happen to like Colloquy better, so I figured I'd mention both. And really, any IRC program will work just fine. All right. Also, before we get started, you'll want to take a look at a CSS editor. Now, we're going to use one of the built-in tools in Firefox, or I'm sorry, one of the contributed things for Firefox called Firebug. For the most part, but I tend to when you're starting off with CSS, I tend to recommend to people to get something like this. This is called Stylemaster. I haven't used this particular program, but it's a WYSIWYG or what you see is what you get editor for CSS. It allows you to see a live preview. It helps you out with the code. It's got a nice visual interface, and if you don't know CSS or really don't know what it's about, it'll really kind of hold your hand and help you out with it. Again, if you're on the Mac, here's one in particular that I recommend that I love. It's called CSS Edit. I don't know how I would live without this. Well, I guess I do because now I have Firebug. But before that, this is what I would use and still use all the time. It's got a great interface. Does some live previewing stuff. It allows you to grab code from other websites and does a lot of really nice things. There's also one for Linux called Just Style CSS Editor. I haven't used this because I haven't really used Linux too extensively to do any development. Most of the stuff I do is on the Mac, so here's one that you can get for that. And the last thing that I'll recommend that you get here is, we'll type in Firebug. I think the website is getfirebug.com. Alright, and what Firebug will do, and if you're running Firefox, you can just click this button and it'll install it. It's kind of a bunch of little HTML tools and CSS tools and JavaScript tools and all sorts of stuff wrapped up into a nice little package. I've just started playing with it a couple of weeks ago, and it's pretty incredible. You can do real-time updates, and I don't know whether or not you can actually save your changes. I imagine that you can somehow. I just haven't had the time to really dig into this yet. But this will also help you out and allow you to make tweaks to your CSS pretty easily. So I would highly recommend that. And the last thing that I'm going to recommend that you get is a search engine edition for Firefox. So if you've got Firefox 2, it'll come with these presets. You can also add to these and go to get more search engines. And lo and behold, I found one for Drupal. So if you go to Mozilla Developer Center down here, and just do a search. I'm sorry, not Developer Center, but go to this link and type in Drupal. You can search the various Drupal websites, including Drupal.org. And I'm going to go ahead and click Add. And this will add the Drupal.org search engine right to your search bar up here in Firefox. You don't even have to go to the page to begin searching. So we're going to start there. And we're going to go ahead and look for a module to help us list our taxonomy a little bit better. So why don't I go back and just restate what we were doing in the beginning. So last time we set up a custom menu for listing particular terms that we enabled with taxonomy. So what would be nice is if we could have this list automatically generated for us. So I know of a module that'll do that, but I'll show you a couple of ways to search for it. So if we go ahead and type in taxonomy menu, we come to these results down here. So we can look, there's one called Taxonomy Menu, which sounds promising. And it's basically searching the whole site here. Now, a lot of times searching the whole site will come up with the result that you want. In this case, we could also check out our downloads and go to modules and browse by taxonomy. Now we can look through each of these and kind of start typing in menu, but there's a lot of things that start to come up. So it can be a little daunting to have to go through all of these. So a lot of times what I'll do, especially when I was starting out, I would use this resource a lot, is go into the IRC chat room. Now what I would recommend when you're starting off is search the site first, look for threads on the topic that you want information on before you resort to IRC. People in there are just going to help you out of their own free will, and it's best practice and much appreciated if when you go in there and ask a question, you stay in and try to help other people. That's kind of how it works. So if you go in there, make sure that you maybe explain a little bit that you're new to Drupal and has anyone tried this, and try and offer help to anybody who is asking a question in there. So I'm going to go up to File and go to New Connection, and I'm going to say my nickname. It could be that, or it could be the Art Lab. And you want to select irc.freenode.net. And then you'll want to click Join Room. Alright, so if you drill down here, just want to do a search for Drupal. And we'll see as the filter shows the various Drupal chat rooms. We'll want to go into Drupal support. Alright, so keep in mind, nobody has to be here and nobody has to help you. But people are oftentimes pretty friendly and will do their best to help you out. So here you could ask your question and say, hello, I'm looking for an easy way to view a list of my taxonomy terms in the sidebar. Any ideas? And if somebody is willing to help you out, they'll respond, and sometimes it takes a while. Sometimes the chat is really active. You'll see there's about 100 or so members in here. Sometimes people are busy doing other things, and if they can help you, they'll respond. So if you get stuck, use pound Drupal support and play nice and respect other people, because they will treat you better in return. So now I know of the module that I'm looking for because I found the answer for this, and it's called the DHTML. I'll do a search for that. DHTML. Taxonomy. So go ahead and download the release. And I'll install it the same way. Oops. So I'll just go to Drupal Lessons and make sure to drop it in the modules folder. I'll go back to Firefox here. And now we'll go ahead and configure this. So I'll go to Administer. Go to Modules. Taxonomy DHTML. And now we can configure it. So we'll go to Administer. And keep in mind that I didn't go through the whole process of reading the notes on Drupal site and reading the release notes and the README files. You should always do that. You'll save yourself a lot of frustration if you actually read the documentation before you go ahead and just start installing things. And you'll want to know if something's in development and if it's possible for you to eventually help out. When you're starting off, it'll be a little difficult to get started with contributing back to the Drupal project, but as you start working with it, you'll probably find a good reason to. Alright, so here are our options for the taxonomy DHTML. It allows us to omit vocabularies. I'm not going to, and it limits the number of vocabulary items. Right, so we don't have to hit save because those are the default settings. And now you'll notice when we go back to the home page, it's not there. So where is it? Well, this is something called blocks. If we go to Administer and we go to Blocks, this is a concept that's been used a lot in other content management systems as well as Drupal. And the idea is that you have little things that do things. And we looked at it before, but just to explain it again. You have your header, you have your right sidebar, your left sidebar, and you can stack these blocks together. So over here we have our blog terms. And we're going to remove this and set it to none, because we're going to replace that with, as you'll see in a second, the taxonomy block topic, which was automatically generated by our new taxonomy DHTML module. So here we can go to left sidebar, hit Save Blocks, and look, right away we have our different topics and they're listed, and it says in parentheses how many nodes are associated with that. So there you go. That's how you can enable that, and that's how you can use another contributed module to help you set up your site. I should also mention this module does some other neat things that we're not taking advantage of right now. It'll have a nice little twirly, downy kind of interface. That's the technical term there, of course. If you have a hierarchical taxonomy structure, we don't. We have a very simple free tagging thing. And this works great for what we're doing. So that's that. Now we're going to shift gears a little bit and move on to getting a custom theme. So while the Garland theme is actually a great looking theme, the obvious problem with it is you can tell a Drupal site when you see it because it's probably using this theme or using Blue Marine. So not to say that it's a bad theme, it's a great looking theme. I think it's one of the better ones actually, but you'll start to notice a pattern with Drupal sites that haven't been themed, and they'll all look similar. And thank goodness we can have different colors. But wouldn't it be nice if you could get more themes? Well, fact of the matter is you can. So if we go back to Drupal.org, there's a lot of contributed themes, just like modules. So if you go to themes, you can browse by name or you can browse by date, and we'll browse by date. And themes work very much like modules. You download them, you put them in the appropriate folder, and then you enable and configure them. So we're going to start with this one. I don't know how to pronounce this. Gagarin, maybe? But we'll go ahead and download this. And just like modules, you'll want to check the release notes to see if anything is odd about the theme. Some cases, themes don't support all of the features in Drupal. Some will only support one sidebar. In this case, it looks like that could be a possibility. And certain modules may be unsupported, so you'll want to check. Really well-written really well-written themes will support everything that Drupal core supports. And just like everything else in Drupal, they're open source, so if you find a way to improve it, you can always develop it and contribute back. Let's go ahead and install that theme. Themes work, like I said before, very much the way that modules do. So we'll just take a look here at the release notes, and there aren't any. They're on the website. That's okay. And I'll drop this in my Drupal lessons folder and go to themes. And that's it. So let's go ahead and enable that theme and see what happens. Go to administer, themes, and we'll enable this one, and you can see it shows up with a nice little icon next to it. And look at that, right away we have a new looking website pretty much. Everything seems to work just fine. The module works okay. It looks nice. It's got a Creative Commons license. Oh, that's because we put that there. It says down here it's powered by Drupal. And I imagine this is the author. And now we can go ahead and continue on, or we can modify it, and this is the last thing we're going to do today. So this isn't a total lesson on CSS or theming, but just kind of an introduction to how you can customize a theme. So this one uses some images, which is why I chose it in particular, which will give us the freedom to edit this pretty easily without even having probably to really deal with the CSS a whole lot. We'll take a look at it. So if you've downloaded and installed Firebug, we're going to go to Firebug and open it. Alright, and I'm going to go click Inspect. And what this allows you to do visually is select pieces of your website to find out various things about it, like how the markup is rendering, what the CSS that's associated with it is, lots of different things. So why don't we start with the logo? Now this should be an obvious one here. It's pulling from logo.png, and you'll notice when you click on it with Inspect turned on, it doesn't actually follow through. You can mouse over it, it shows you what the image is, and then you can see the CSS associated with it as well. So the idea behind this is we can take this path right here, which is going to be themes, Gagarin, logo.png, and we can change that. So what I recommend is that you start by doing simple things like this. You'll get the hang of it real fast, and then you can start dealing with the CSS code. So we're going to go here, themes, and grab our logo.png and open this in Photoshop. Now I'm using Photoshop. You don't have to use Photoshop. You can use any image editor if you want. The GIMP is a nice free open source cross-platform one. But I prefer Photoshop and tend to like to use it the most, so we'll be using that in this tutorial and in future ones. So a couple of things. To make sure that it's going to work okay with your theme, you'll want to consider the size of the document. So here I'm just going to go to image size, and it's going to be 210 by 130. So I'm going to want to constrain it to that, and actually I'm going to go ahead and just keep working off of this file. I'm going to go to image mode, RGB color, because it was in an indexed color mode. And now I have the freedom to go ahead and modify the logo to anything that I want. So again, this isn't a lesson in Photoshop necessarily, but just a few things you can do. And we're going to go ahead and create a new layer, and I'll just grab a custom shape here and take one of the other ones here. Grab a puzzle piece. Very original, I know, but it'll work for now. Alright, so I'm just gonna scale that up like that. And I want to reference the original color scheme. So I can either pick colors out of the original image that's down here, and that'll work okay. Or I can look at the colors here, and I think I'm gonna do that. So again, using Firebug, I'm gonna hit inspect and click on well, game idea here, and you can see that this is a link, and over here there's a couple of things. It says A hover, so the color when you're hovering over it, and you can see a preview like that, or the color like this, which is just for a regular link. This is what I want. I want this logo to match the links on the page. And go back into Photoshop, and down here I'm just going to paste that in. Guess we can't grab that pound symbol there. Alright, and that'll be okay. So under paths, I'll just drag and drop this like that. And I'll grab a outline color, and I'll just use a gray, since a light gray. And we'll come back to that in a second. And in Photoshop, I'll just go to Layer Styles, Blending Options. Give it a nice little drop shadow. And maybe a stroke color. We'll make it that color. Alright, and just maybe a couple more things here. We'll do bevel and emboss. Take the opacity of the shadows down, so it's just kind of a subtle bevel there. And maybe the last thing that we'll do is give it a nice little glossy shine. So I'll just fill this layer up with white. And just kind of select a little bit like this. Oops. And I'll press Command Shift I to invert the selection like that, and press delete. And then the last thing here, I'll just grab the shape from here and do the same thing. So Apple Option I or Command Option I, press delete, and I'll just scale this down, drop the opacity down. Alright, now I have a very trendy and uninspiring looking logo, but hopefully it'll get the job done. So the last thing I'll do is just flatten the image. Whoops. Merge visible, sorry, layer merge visible. delete this bottom layer here, and then just save it. Let's do a refresh and see what happens. There you go. Now we've changed the logo. And the same works for the other elements on the page. So if we wanted to change these images down here, we could go in and find out what first of all what they are. So we can go to inspect. See that there's a big chunk here or over here. And this is just body. So if we click on the body and look at the background, it says bg.gif or GIF. So why don't we pull that up? bg.gif. Bring that into Photoshop. This will just take a second. And if we just want to change the hue, for example, or give it a gradient, again, image, adjustments, RGB. Sorry, image mode, RGB. And we'll just give it a little gradient there. So give it kind of that bluish tone to it. Make sure we're using a linear gradient there. Whoops. And I'll just hide this for a second. Select this area. Delete that. And either drop the opacity or use an overlay. Something like that might work okay. So I'm happy with that. And since we're working for the web, you'll want to make sure that you're using web safe colors and all that kind of good stuff. So we'll go File, Save for Web. Select GIF. Keep it lower like that. Hopefully this will match okay. And we'll go to Drupal Lessons, Themes, and save over it. Now I always recommend keeping a backup copy of your theme in case you totally mess things up. Alright, let's just see what that looks like. Now we should see a little difference over here. Alright, so you can see the area like that is now changed. And we can continue onward if we wanted to and open up the image that's in the header, make that match, etc. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time with this, but hopefully this will give you an idea of how you can work off of some open source themes without having to learn CSS from scratch and begin to customize some things as you go through this process. Not everybody's going to want to be a theming ninja or a Drupal developer. Some people are just going to want to use this software, and that's fine. So thanks for watching. And this is kind of the end of how to create a single user blog. Now there's some things I haven't covered because, well, this has already gone on for about an hour and a half. But some other things you might want to consider we'll talk about at the end, like integrating services like FeedBurner into your site, creating an RSS feed, maybe a podcast. Lots of other things that are good to know, but